Hi guys, it's Granny here. Hey, I was just running through some things on the Lori Vallow trial, right? The whole Chad Daybell case, and there are so many pieces and parts and people and events to the story that you almost have to take one at a time and go through and hear their stories to understand everything that went on. And I came across a video by Fox um, that was of Zac Cox, Lori's nephew. Zac is Lori's brother Adam's son. And um, they were they didn't fall hook, line, and sinker for Lori's stories, okay, like most of the rest of the family. And Zac actually lived with Lori and Charles for a while before everything in their marriage started blowing up. And then a little bit later on, he actually lived with Melanie and Brandon Boudreaux, who Melanie was Lori's niece. So, and then he watched their marriage kind of blow up along the same lines as Lori and Charles did. So I thought we'd just kind of go through that video a little bit and break it down, talk about it a little bit, kind of helps us get a better understanding of what was going on behind the scenes in the family, in the Cox family, when all this started taking place. Okay, so let's go there.
Do I need to hit continue here?
I'm recording to the cloud right now, so we're good to go.
Cool.
Yeah, all right. Zac Cox, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I've never gone to talk to you on the record, but we've always been in touch.
Yep.
And just so people know, Zac, you are Lori Vallow's nephew.
Correct. Yep, I am Adam Cox's son, her brother.
So Charles Vallow was Uncle Charles to you.
Yep.
Tylee Ryan was like a sister.
Yep.
JJ Vallow was like your little brother.
Lori was like a second mom.
And you lived with them.
I lived with them January 2018 to about May of 2018, and then I went back home for the summer and came back to Arizona September-ish of 2018 and lived with Lori until about January of 2019 when things really picked up and snapped off with Charles.
So that's huge. I really, of course, want to get your reaction on the case, the death investigation with Charles Vallow. And now, obviously, everyone knows that Chandler PD has submitted their case for one charge of conspiracy to commit murder to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. So it's up to MCAO to actually charge her. But this is huge for Charles. But we're going to go all the way back to, I just want you to tell me what 2018 to 2019 was like.
Okay, so just a quick note here. Obviously, this was still early on in the game. Justin's talking about what's going on legally. Um, and we already know that this is in trial now. So I just wanted to let you know that, yes, this was a while ago, this video.
You saw the change in her. And that date, 2018, October 2018 specifically, The 26th, when she met Chad Daybell in Utah for preparing the people, that's when prosecutors saying this is when it began for them. You really saw how everything unfolded in the household. Just take me back to that and how she was acting.
Yeah, so for me, it was 2017. They had just moved to Arizona from Hawaii. And I went out there with Colby and my dad for spring break. And they were all gone one day. Like everyone in the family went to do something or go see a movie. And I kind of hung out at the house with Lori. And she started talking about all these books that she's been reading. Chad Daybell books. I forgot what this other book was called, but it's really controversial in the LDS Church for the beliefs. I'm trying to remember what it is. I'll say it if it pops up. And talking about Julie Rowe's podcast and listening to those things. And she said some scary stuff that I was sitting there with JJ and one of my other cousins. And to me, I was, I think 17, 18. She was saying, if you watch an R-rated movie or say a bad word, there's always an evil spirit that's screaming in your face, like encouraging it. And I was on my phone like, wow, that's crazy. So, time goes on. I move in with them and start working in Arizona.
Okay. Can you imagine 17, 18 years old, and he's being told by someone he loves that if he sees an R-rated movie or he says a swear word, there's a demon standing there ready to get him. My goodness. I I don't know if you guys have heard the terminology of like a demon under every rock. It's kind of what happens when people go overboard um, and put things, add onto scripture that isn't there.
And she spent a lot of time at the temple. Charles would go on trips, so I'd help with JJ for business. So I'd help watch JJ, hang out with Tylee. She'd be at the temple for about 8 hours a day, like a full-time job sometimes. And I think on Thursdays, she actually did work at the temple in Gilbert. So a lot of the changes I saw was she started to, like if we were driving in the car, instead of listening to the radio or music, it would be a Julie Rowe podcast. Or I forgot his name, maybe Mike Stroud had a podcast, a lot of really religious outside of the church podcasts. So she was always listening to something from these beliefs. And change-wise, because I had talked to Charles about it, because she was telling us that she never had to eat again, never had to go to the bathroom, that she was invincible. When she was saying these things, it was towards January of 2019 when she had kicked Charles out of the house. That's when I had left, and that's when she was saying those things mostly.
That was late January 2019, and we see the body cam.
Oh my gosh. So she didn't have to eat. She didn't have to go to the bathroom, really. Okay. So, guys, you know that she couldn't have believed what she was saying because she still would have had to eat and she still would have had to go to the bathroom. She was still human, even though she didn't want to believe she was. So, she was lying, out and out lying by telling people that she didn't have to eat, she didn't have to go to the bathroom. She was lying. So what did she do? Did she wait until everybody was really busy and didn't notice her going to the bathroom? I mean, that's crazy.
Camera footage.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Charles is, pleading with Gilbert PD because he wanted her mentally evaluated and all his stuff was gone. We know that story.
That was the day
It was hard for you though, and a lot of people have questions about this. he was contacting you, he's contacting Tyler. What was he saying, and why was that difficult for you? What were you doing?
So January, I can't remember the day. I was really
probably
upset.
the 30th, around, I think the 30th.
It was the very end of January. I know that because we had just moved into that house at January 1st. We were only in that new house for about a month. Lori had told me that Charles was dead and there was a zombie living in him, and she was really manipulative about some things before that with Charles, with the entire family. So the entire family's cutting Charles off. She sends this text, me and Charles are in a big fight. If he calls you, don't answer. So everyone in my family listened to that and instantly sided with Lori because Lori was saying that he was having an affair. So come that day, she tells me that he's a zombie, he's dead. There's someone living inside him named Ned Schneider. And this is the day that it kind of snapped for me. Because previously I had discussed this with Charles. And I said, this was before really everything happened. But I was like, what do you believe? Because he had asked me too. I mean, do you believe the things Lori's saying? And I was like, well, I don't. And I don't want you to get mad if you believe him. And he said, I don't believe him. But, it makes her happy. She's taking care of JJ. She's making dinner. Like, she was living a regular life believing these things. And at the time, obviously, she ended up hurting others and hurting herself, but none of us knew it would get this big. And we just said, she's not hurting anyone. She's not hurting herself, like, for believing these things. It's, if anyone believes anything, whether it be politics, religion, sports, it was her belief. And
What do you think, guys? If you saw a relative of yours going down the deep end like this, would you say something? Or would you, like he's saying, it's her belief? She's happy. She's not hurting anybody. Would you just let it go on? Because this is scary. This is really scary. Look what happened. Lives were lost. And Zach is going to go on to tell us all, that he believed that not only was Charles and Tammy and JJ and Tylee unalived, but he believes that Alex was too. So what do you guys think? If you had someone in your family, a loved one, go off the deep end like this, and you knew that what they were doing was out there, way out there, would you stage an intervention or do something? Because obviously they're not going to listen, because she was past that point already. At this time, she was past the point of listening.
and it wasn't affecting us. So he said, just nod your head and keep her happy, because she was happy, and they were happy until that October where she had met Chad, where, according to those documents, is really when everything started to plan out.
The documents that Chad emailed about light and dark spirits, or who she was in her past life,
Yep.
and other people who they were in their past lives, in her circle. Like, had you seen these on paper? Has she talked about them? Were these like very confidential to her?
She was very confident. She was really confidential about them. She had one where she was out and about, and she had asked me to text her. I sent it over to you, I think, one of those pictures, but she had asked me to text her a picture of some page she left on the printer. And I went downstairs, took a picture, texted it to her, and I think it was something about their past lives and people that they knew. Some of the other experiences I had was they filmed one of their podcast episodes downstairs when I was upstairs, and she had told me, if I come downstairs to be super quiet and not interrupt, things like that. And that was with, Melanie Gibb, Jason Mao, and I forgot his name, but he was part of their podcast too. There was a fourth guy. Thor. Yep, it was Thor. So they filmed that podcast down below, but sorry I get sidetracked because there's just so many things that that
Yeah.
pop up. That
Oh, it's okay. I mean, this is a tight group, a tight-knit group doing
Yeah.
the podcast, I assume. Did they worship Chad? How much did they talk about Chad? Or was he kind of just behind the scenes still at that point?
Lori was, to me, Chad was just an author that Lori and Alex read his books. You know, I
Okay.
didn't know that they had Chad, they were meeting up with Chad, things like that. Because Al actually gave me one of his books one time, Chasing Paradise is the name. And he said, if you read this, I'll give you $100. Because he wanted me, and it was about, they really believed it was a true story that this
But
girl,
Alex was really into it too, not just Lori.
yeah, Alex,
Alex and Lori were both on
So I am really curious, guys. Have any of you read Chad Daybell's books? I'm almost thinking I'd like to, and yet there's a part of me that thinks, no, because if anything's dark, they probably are, right? If anything's dark, they probably are. But I'm just curious if anyone out there has read his books. I'd be curious to find that out. Um, and it's interesting that Zach thinks that to him, Lori just thought that Chad was an author. Um, so obviously, she did not confide in Zach about anything that she had with Chad. But maybe by that point that her and Chad really did get together, that he was already out of the picture as far as Black Sheep's family.
the same wavelength with these books. They're always fans
yeah,
and wanted to bring you in or whoever would listen.
right. Yeah, the thing about Alex too is mentally he was always off. Like he was a weird guy. And he was
Interesting.
definitely easy to manipulate, and I think Lori knew that. And she was very manipulative. But he full-hearted believed these things. She had told Al that she talked to Jesus Christ face to face one time, and Al went and told his bishop that. And then his bishop was kind of like, that's kind of strange. That's an awesome experience, but I've never heard of someone saying that before. And Lori had gotten mad at Al about it because Al would go and say these things to other people that sounded crazy, which were crazy. And
So if Lori truly did speak to Jesus Christ in person, why would she get mad that Al said anything to anybody? Um, Food for thought.
she knew that, and it would upset her that he would go tell other people that. So um, that's how that really was. They had that dynamic of always, same thing with him. He was a truck driver, and instead of like listening to music or, the radio, he was listening to religious podcasts and these, I don't know what the right word is for these books, these preparing a people books, maybe,
Yeah.
kind of about the end of times and things. But going back to that day with Charles, so we get into that fight around the afternoon, and I start packing up my things, and Tylee comes upstairs because Lori had asked for Tylee to go pick up JJ from school, and take him to do something fun. So Tylee had asked me if I wanted to go with her to pick him up from school and go do something fun. So I said yes. So finish packing my things, load up my car. We take her car, go pick up JJ, and then we went to eat at Freddy's. He loved going to Freddy's right by his school. And then we went to the movies, and we saw a movie, and JJ loved to play in the play area at the movies, so he did that while we were watching a movie. And I came back and got in my car, and I went to my grandparents. And my whole thought process during this time was that I don't like conflict. I know Lori and Charles have had fights before. I know this one was a little different with why she was fighting with him. And I really, to be honest, I just didn't want to be involved. It was something that I thought they would work out, things like that. So it was a long day. I get to my grandparents around like 7:30 at night because they know Charles is having a fight. Charles and Lori were having a fight. And I said, hey, can I stay with you guys for a little bit if that doesn't pan out? And they said, sure. And I regret it. I plugged in my phone, set it down, and I went to sleep that night. And that's when I woke up to 30 texts from Charles. That was the night that, and I should have called him. That's probably one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't call him that day driving to my grandparents saying Lori's going crazy. He had canceled like that. That's one of my biggest regrets with this whole thing. And
so you had witnessed that she was upset. You're on that other side where Charles is coming back from Houston and you are with Lori and she's saying that he's a zombie. He's Ned or Nick Schneider. She cancels his flight, etc. The truck is taken. His stuff. I don't know. How does one person go about removing all these belongings too?
So she had Melanie Gibb come over and help her out. And that's when me, Tylee, and JJ were gone.
So it was just her and Melanie Gibb
packed up
taking out all his clothes, his laptop, or whatever he had.
So Charles had said too, once he found his stuff, because I woke up to about 30 texts from him, and I woke up at 7 and called him instantly. And he said he was at the house, and he found his stuff. She hid all of his stuff. She packed it up in boxes and put it behind the food storage in this closet, because she had a ton of food storage too. So she left it all behind this stuff thinking he would never find it. Or it got to a point where she eventually told him where his truck was. And there were some other things that happened. I think he had gone to JJ's school that day too to pick him up with the rental car. And he took her purse, and that was that whole thing.
That's a little body camera footage, and Lori's telling her side to the cops, and eventually she goes and gets mentally evaluated, but she's released like that.
Right. So past that, then she's fit for trial.
And you went to your grandparents talking about Barry and Janice. I'm interested in what they thought.
And that's the other thing is I was in a tough situation that this is probably my biggest regret is I should have done more back then. Everyone in the family hated Charles. No one was talking to him, answering his calls, texts, going off on him because they believe.
Who is everyone? First off, so people know who's everyone. The majority.
Can you imagine what Charles felt like? I mean, I realize it's his in-laws' family that won't talk to him, but he really was trying to get help for Lori. He was. He was the only one speaking out about it. And the rest, you could hear, like Zac said, is one of his regrets that he didn't stand up for Charles. That he and Adam and Brandon, but wait, you'll hear more. It's really interesting.
The whole Cox family. Barry, Janice, Summer, her husband, Colby, Kelsey, everyone took Lori's side immediately without listening to Charles.
They assume she's telling the truth.
Yep.
He's having an affair.
Yep.
We don't want anything to do with it. We're not talking to him.
My dad, me, Brandon was monitored by Melanie when it came to talking to Charles because she was obviously really tight-knit with Lori. But we were the only ones talking to Charles. And I really felt like I was an undercover agent talking to Charles because if they saw his name pop up on my phone, I knew, there'd be conflict, there would be a fight. So I would be texting Charles, call him when I was out on my own or driving around. And this went on for really that whole period up until he was killed, from about January to July.
When you say monitored, Melanie Pulowski monitored her ex-husband, Brandon Boudreaux. What do you mean, like checking the phone for Charles?
Not checking it, but like Brandon wouldn't be able to get away to actually speak with Charles. He never really had the right opportunity. They had the kids they had to watch. He couldn't really get time to himself. So I remember one time too, Charles was saying that he's going to move back to Houston with JJ. And this was, Kay came down to visit Charles and stay with him. And And he said they were moving. If I wanted to come by, because I would go by the house, see them for a little bit when I could. I was going to real estate school at the time. And after class, I'd go and see them and then head home. But he said one point they were moving back to Houston, which they did. And I told my grandparents that I was going to go see Charles and JJ before he left. Well, my grandma had texted Lori about that and said, hey, just a heads up, because I saw that she left this text, her phone on the computer. Phone on the computer, sorry. She left her phone on the table in the kitchen, and it said, like, hey, Zac is going to see Charles and JJ. Just wanted you to give you a heads up. Because at this point, I would text Lori occasionally to check in. I think this is when she was in Hawaii, kind of off and doing her own thing. This is when no one really knew where she was at.
Yeah.
And I was worried about her. I mean, this was a really confusing time for me to where all this stuff is going on. You know, I know if I get caught talking to Charles, I could get kicked out of this house. I know that I love Lori and I was worried about her at the time. And I want to make everyone happy. Like, I don't want people to think I'm siding, which, to be honest, I wish I would have just been more bold about it. It's something that I regret. I should have just instantly stuck up with Charles's side and let the family know that's where I was at, because he was 100% right. And it kind of just pissed me off that she had said that text to Lori like I was doing something bad. Like that was such an awful thing that I was going to see Charles and JJ. So that's how they viewed it. That's how everyone viewed this situation with Charles when it happened. Another key thing that Charles said was that everything Lori is accusing Charles of doing is what she was actually doing. So she was accusing Charles of cheating with, you know, prostitutes, whoever, had this girlfriend in Texas when she's really having an affair with Chad Daybell. And then she had accused Charles, my dad, Brandon, and me. This is what we found out. I mean, it's such a lengthy story, but after Charles was killed, no one in the family told us. Colby, my grandparents, no one texted us. So my dad's in town in Arizona, and we're house sitting at my Aunt Summer's house because their family's in New York, and we're watching their dog. And my dad flew in Wednesday night. Thursday comes, which is the morning that Charles was killed. And, you know, I go to work that day. My dad does whatever with my grandparents. I think he went to go eat with them and then was at the house. And then that night we went to play basketball. Friday comes, we went to see our second cousins that we were related with. Still no word from Charles. You know, we sent him a couple texts, and it was weird because he's normally always on his phone. So at this point, Charles has been dead for basically 24 hours, and we still don't know. No one told us, texted us. They all knew because they were going through Charles's phone and saw that me and my dad were texting with, and Brandon were texting with Charles, the family, the Cox family. So Friday comes, we go visit with second cousins. I get off work, go to sleep that night. Texted Colby if he wanted to go play basketball. No response, obviously. We texted Al if he wanted to go to the comedy club to go do something. No response. So no one's responding to us. No one's talking to us. Saturday comes, and we drive up to Tucson to see my dad's friend, to visit with him. And while we're driving up there, we're seriously like, did they do something to Charles? Because we haven't heard from him in 2 days. Calls, texts, and I mean, he was always on his phone. He would at least respond. So we get there and we start talking to my dad's friend in Tucson, and we're like, man, we haven't heard from Charles. Like, Lori and Al have been super crazy. And at this point, me and Lori have zero relationship. She had said some more rumors about me that she had spread to the family and to Melanie, Brandon's ex-wife, because at this point I was living with Brandon and Melanie. So I experienced the same thing with their marriage, you know, again. And it's just a mess. So
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I'm sorry if I go off on tangents.
No, you're not. I've never heard your perspective this way. because you're in this basically the front row seat,
Yeah.
seeing everybody.
Everybody, right?
And this is July 12th, July 13th by the time you haven't heard about Charles, because he was killed July 11th, and then you find out everything, and you know, it's got to be hard knowing that's your uncle, but did you believe it was self-defense?
So so he gets killed July 11th. I'm looking at the calendar here for 2019 July. He gets killed the 11th in the morning. It's July 13th, Saturday afternoon. We're in Tucson. And we're telling my dad's friend, like, we think Lori and Al might have done something because it's just so weird that we haven't heard from him and how crazy they've been. And my dad's friend goes, well, how do you spell his name? I want to look him up, like, on social media or online to see what it looks like. So he Googles Charles Vallow, and all these news reports pop up. Texas man fatally shot and killed by brother-in-law. And when he said that, he read that out loud. And, like, I get goosebumps still talking about it, but, like, my heart dropped.
Wow, huh?
And we pulled up the article, and, I mean, instantly reading it, saying that it was self-defense, and Charles hit Al with a baseball bat. I mean, if Charles really hit Al with a baseball bat, Al would be dead. I mean, Al would be seriously injured, not able to shoot a gun. He wouldn't have one tiny scratch, you know, on the back of it.
And what he's saying here, if Charles would Al with a baseball bat, he would have been dead or seriously injured. I truly believe because Charles was a professional baseball player, someone who knew how to handle a baseball bat.
His head.
He would be blacked out, knocked out at the least.
I mean, at least knocked out, right? Bleeding, needing to go to the hospital. He would. So we called Kay that day, and Kay and Larry, and they were in shock. You know, they had said that no one believed it, really. No one believed the story. I'm trying to remember exactly what we talked about, but, you know, Kay and Larry were on speakerphone. We were on speakerphone, and I was just sitting there with my shirt over my head down. I literally could not believe this had happened. Like, they murdered Charles. There's no doubt about it. So, and then, you know, when you see the footage of the body cam of the police, he's laying there with the bat perfectly next to him, and his flip-flops are still on. I mean, if there was a scuffle, at least, like, to me, flip-flops are coming off if there's a scuffle. I mean, there's just so many things that stuck out to me when I saw that video that didn't add up. And the baseball was placed perfectly, didn't roll around. Like, it just, the bat, sorry, not the baseball bat. It just didn't make sense. Off the rip, we didn't believe it. Lori at this point had told the family that my dad, me, Brandon, Charles were all conspiring against her, trying to get her insurance money, which is what she really was going after with Charles. Like he had said, everything she's doing is what she's accusing him of doing. So hearing the news that she's at least getting, you know, I know Al's dead, but he'd be charged for some of those things. And I wholeheartedly believe, too, that they killed Al. I mean, the timing is insane right after Tammy gets exhumed.
The day after.
That's
Isn't that interesting? So here's somebody right in the Cox family who believes that they unalived his Uncle Al as well.
that's crazy. But, you know, as far as what was the charge called? Belief to commit.
No, this is a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, which we've been waiting for Chandler PD to. I mean, they said in last August, they were close. Whatever close meant, you know, 6 months or so around that time. That was like the time frame. But here we are. April 1st is when they did it, and they waited to announce it now after the grand jury indictment. It's all timed up. So, just how do you feel for Charles?
It's 2 years too late, but I'm glad that it's finally coming. I think the ball was completely dropped when it happened. I think Lori was very, in that video, there's just so many things that are just so suspicious that I don't know how there was an investigation immediately, or more questions or more belief, because that whole body cam footage, the vibe is off with everybody. And Tylee obviously looked very uncomfortable when they came back, which was unfortunate that they had dragged
She's
her.
the only one that looks very uncomfortable. I mean, Alex, he's holding onto his head. He's saying it's self-defense. Lori's smiling, wide smile. She's laughing. She's having a good time, or, you know, friendly, not showing any concern or sadness, knowing that her husband, even though estranged, has just been shot.
And different
But
stories too.
I don't know if anyone's asked, what did Tylee have to say about this?
The last time that I saw Tylee was that Saturday we found out Charles was killed. We drove back to Tucson, back from Tucson to Phoenix to my grandparents' house. And Tylee was there, and we get in there, and this is really where everything happens with our family, where we get into a huge fight with our grandparents. My dad gets in a fight with his parents. I get in a fight with them, and they kick us out, and we moved to Kansas. Or I moved back to Kansas with my parents. One, because we were scared of Al and Summer. That night, Al and Lori, because we stayed at Summer's house, and they knew where we were at. We stayed up all night because we were scared they were going to come in there and do something to us, and then flew out the next day. So that last day, that Saturday, we get there, and Tylee's in the kitchen crying to my grandma. And she's hugging her, and Tylee's getting ready to leave. And the thing about Tylee is, if she truly believed, you know, that my dad, Charles, me, and Brandon were conspiring against her mom, she would have said something to us. Tylee was very boisterous when it came to conflict. And she was not, she was walking out because she was leaving as we were getting there. And sorry. She,
this poor kid.
as she's walking out, she's looking at me, and I can just tell that she wanted to say something to me. Oh, sorry.
Take your time.
I could just tell that she wanted to say something about what happened on Thursday. And she started walking towards me, and my grandma kind of like guided her shoulders and walked her out. And that was the last time that I saw Tylee.
How awful.
And then they moved to Idaho.
Yeah, and at this point, she leaves, and we get in this huge fight with my grandparents about how they think they went through Charles's phone. Lori had Charles's phone after he was killed for a few days, and probably deleted a ton of stuff, saw all our messages talking with Charles. And
what are these messages saying?
Charles wanted my dad to come down to talk with Lori and record what Lori was saying to play to a bishop, because Charles thought if he could get her excommunicated from the church, that she wouldn't be able to go to the temple anymore, which she loved going to the temple, and she'd snap out of it. And obviously no one in the family would help. Lori wasn't talking to me or Charles at this point, avoiding us. So he asked my dad for help, so that's why my dad flew down. So our plan was to, like, my dad wanted to meet with Lori, record her, and help Charles out. And they saw these texts that, this whole time I was talking with Charles and going to see him and JJ and whatever the case was. Because at this point, too, Lori had gotten back with Charles and moved to Houston, right? So Lori's been living in Houston with Charles, and then he rents out a place for Tylee and Lori and JJ to be in Phoenix around the family still. And I never knew where this place was. This is where they ended up shooting Charles.
Yeah, Chandler.
Yeah, they never told me they moved back. I found out they moved back from Tylee, just texting me that they're back in Arizona because she had driven out to Arizona by herself.
And so you never talked to Tylee again after you saw her, and you never texted, never called?
The whole family had blocked us on everything.
Oh.
All social media, because they all took Lori's side. No one reached out to me to ask me if I was conspiring against Lori.
You had no idea where they left to?
No idea. No contact with them.
You're in Kansas. Everyone's just split up.
Everyone's split up. Family is destroyed. Like that. And obviously they all sided with Lori. No one asked us anything. Is this true? Are you guys... No one even called to say, are you guys plotting? Because she had said that we were plotting to kill Lori for her insurance money. Me, Charles, Brandon, and my dad.
Did she even have a life insurance policy?
I have no idea. I know that's what she was doing against Charles and Chad eventually with Tammy and all that stuff. But that's really how it ended. I mean,
Zac,
yeah.
I could talk to you for hours. I mean, this is a lot, and I'm just, I'm sorry because all of you in the family are affected somehow. Everyone.
Yep.
Your grandparents, your dad, your aunt, everyone has been impacted somehow. Whether you guys agreed with each other or not, you guys fought.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I mean, it's been a long journey.
Yeah, it has been, and not just us two. I mean, all of Tylee's friends, JJ's friends, JJ's school. I mean, we went to JJ's school for his birthday to drop off some balloons, and they've got a ribbon on a tree for him and a ribbon on a tree for Tylee, and the teachers just loved him. Like
there's just this ripple effect.
All these people, they're so selfish that they didn't think it would matter. I mean, they thought they were doing their own thing.
So there's one step in a direction where, I know she's innocent till proven guilty, but something has been done. I know you said it's a little too late, but still for Charles, Tammy, JJ, Tylee, Brandon's case is still open. I mean, it's been a long time coming. Zac, thank you, man. Thank you for just being brave. I know we've been talking for a while. Thank you for just speaking about this and opening up. I think that helps in a way too for you to just get it out there and get out your perspective and your side. It's a lot to deal with that at such a young age. This was 2 years ago for you. You're now a different person too.
Yeah, it's been a really long 2 years, and just been tough every day. There was a point too in 2019 where we were talking with Brandon and Kay and Larry. That's kind of how we were hearing updates, and hearing that Chad Daybell's wife died, that Brandon got shot at, that Al died, Tammy's body's exhumed, and that's when kind of when things blew up. But every day, we were really scared that Al was going to come kill us. We really were, for 2 years until we found out he was dead. We were really worried that we were going to be next, because if you look at it, Charles, Brandon, me, and although they didn't have anything to gain from us insurance-wise, but they killed Charles, who was against Lori. They tried to kill Brandon, who was against Lori, and then you got me and my dad, who were against Lori and her, whatever her case was, whatever she believed, right? She thought we were going to kill her for insurance money. And I think
maybe allegedly you're a dark spirit.
A dark spirit, that too. She could have said the same thing about us. The other thing too was there was that Rexburg PD body cam footage where she had said something about my dad um, chasing after her, tracking her down in Rexburg that they played in that court case, that preliminary hearing for Chad. They never showed it, but they had mentioned something like that. And I was like, they wholeheartedly believe these things, that to either give them an excuse to do what they did, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Zach, I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Yep. Thank you for letting me come chat.
All right. Well, we'll talk.
Wow, huh? I first of all just feel so sorry for that entire family. But my heart broke when Zach was talking about Tylee and JJ, and how he actually kind of broke down a little bit, and how awful for him. How awful. I can't even, I don't know, just that whole family was tore apart. And now, of course, we know they're in trial, and be really curious to know what Lori's parents now think, because they've not been at the trial. Um, Nobody's been there for Lori in the trial. So it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Here, I really honestly think that Zach gave a good rendition of what was going on in the family during all this, that even they believed Lori. And, you know, it's not clear whether the parents and all the rest of them believed Lori's beliefs, but they stood behind her. And only to discover, you know, what could happen. Um, and I can imagine the fear that Adam and Zach felt, that they were afraid that Al was going to come after them. I can imagine. Um, and why not? It's like you said, they went after Brandon, you know, went after Charles. It's some, she had something to gain from Charles, but they did go after Brandon, and they probably had nothing to gain out of that. And so who's to say that he wouldn't have gone after Adam and Zach? What a mess, huh? Well, I'm sure that we'll find more. The trial is still going on, and there'll be more videos to do for this. But in the meantime, we'll see you on the next one. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, okay? Thanks, guys.